speeds. I don't know how speed bumps are supposed to be set up, whether how they decide where they're going to put them, whether they're a certain distance apart. But initially we had a little extra noise, and they've been in place long enough. And again, this is right in front of our house. And I like what you said about the anger. What happens consistently? I've seen school buses do it and ambulances do it, and anybody. It's not a guy, like not speed demons. It's a little old lady from Pasadena. Anyway, you slow down mostly, and a lot of them stop, gun the engines, and take off like they're at a speedway. A lot of them beep their horns when they get up to the speed bump. They lay on the horn and then lay it, and you can hear it all over. The motorcycles have figured out a way to get around the speed bump by going on the side. And we see this situation getting worse every day. And the whole neighborhood is concerned, the volume of noise, but the safety. I know neighbors that won't walk their dogs, even up on the lawn, because it's really kind of a reckless place to live right now. So I don't know what can be done. I'm here just to let you know what we're experiencing. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Since you live there, you lived there a long time.
Yep.
Is the situation now that presents itself worse than it was before?
Yes.
Less desirable.
Well, what we're seeing is a lot of reckless driving, and I love what you said about someone that called it anger driving. And Mr. Lefevre said when I first came in about, they find out, like, this is the newness of it, and once they find out that it's going to bump their cars, it could right over the speed. So, but it is annoying. I have never seen anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not against speed bumps. I just don't know how you place them, how it's supposed to be. People react differently, but I'll tell you, it's been enough time since we did it to get real clear patterns of behavior.
I had a question from reviewing the packet for this evening's minutes. There's the diagram in there of the more permanent bumps, and it had a height of 3 inches. Are these temporaries that we use? I believe they're higher than that, aren't they? Do we know?
Let me unmute Perry.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I got here a little later. You're talking about the speed bumps on Spring Valley, right?
Yes.
That's why I'm.
Okay.
Okay, Perry should be able to answer, Mr. Lefevre.
Pardon?
Yeah, I think the temporary ones may be maybe as much as 4 inches high, but they are a lot shorter. There is only, they're only like 12 inches wide. So it is a quicker thump than what you're going to hear with like the older or the other ones that we have that are 6 feet long, where you hear the first bump, the tires are going up, and then the back tires hit it. You don't hear it as much. These are a more abrupt, the temporary ones are just a more abrupt bump. They're just like the old style speed bumps like that are in shopping centers and stuff. So you are going to hear definitely more, but unfortunately, this is a pattern that you will see whenever you put speed bumps, tables, humps anywhere. This is the result.
So how do we know if we have a temporary or permanent speed bump in front of our house?
Well, generally, our traffic engineer would make that recommendation as to
Okay.
terms of where the speed bumps should be placed.
Do your traffic people, police, do they monitor these? They can park in my driveway if they like.
Well,
To answer your question, what is there now is a temporary bump.
Okay.
It is not a permanent installation. Our intent is to evaluate for the possibility of making them permanent. And the diagram that was included in our information has a 3-inch height. I believe it's still more of a bump than a table, though, as Mr. Madonna was describing. But that part of it is maybe academic to the question of how we implement at some point in the future. So,
As part of this discussion also, I did have a conversation with a gentleman today that also expressed concern about the height of them and suggested maybe something more like its own Kaufman, which are tables. But I think those are tables in connection with crosswalks.
okay.
So I don't know if they would be the thing to use on Spring Valley Road.
I mean, if I could say just one
Yeah.
more thing. I mean, at the end of the day, we have residents come before us and asked us to determine, what was going on out there. We did that with speed analysis. Our speed analysis determined that there is a speeding issue on that road. Okay? The next step in that process is that we therefore try to do something about it. One of the tools that we could use is speed bumps or speed tables. And that's where we are. But we have to be careful because we have identified this road as speed related, okay? And we want to be careful about going back now and undermining things. We've tried to do everything using facts and statistics. And what you're saying about driver behavior, and that's, unfortunately, we can't regulate that here.
They took down the thing which indicates your speed when you get down closer to Sylvan Road. They took that off. So my experience is that there's nothing till you get about a half a mile up from Morristown Road.
Yes, we've noticed that also, and there'll be an evaluation of those things as we go into next spring after evaluating this fall. So thank you. I'd like to hear the gentleman in the back. If you come forward, sir, and give us your name. I know you're anxious to address this.
My name's Scott Armstrong. I live on Corvair Road. And I've lived there 16 years. Came up from Washington, DC, which, as everybody knows, is a pretty heavy traffic city. So I'm used to a lot of traffic and a lot of what goes on. I also lived in the city of Lancaster for 18 years. So actually on Church Street, which is the thoroughfare through to Lyme. So I'm pretty familiar with Lester Summers and all his trucks and everybody else coming up through the city. But the bottom line on the thing here is, I agree with the lady. From what I've seen here, first of all, I think there's another alternative that we could consider here. And that is that instead of putting speed bumps or speed humps there, if you really are concerned about safety on that road, why don't you widen that part of the road, put sidewalks on either side? Because the real problem there that I've identified since I've lived there is not so much people speeding through there, because frankly, it's a main thoroughfare. If somebody was stupid enough to buy a house on a main thoroughfare and then they complain, it's sort of like somebody buying a house at the end of a jet runway. And then all of a sudden they're complaining to the municipal authority that, hey, there's a lot of noise from jets here. Well, duh. You bought a house on a jet runway. If people have little kids or if people have dogs and they don't want them running out in that street on that main thoroughfare, because it is not a neighborhood street, it is a main thoroughfare. It's a connecting road.
Collector.
The bottom line on the thing here is, there's this thing called a fence. They could buy one rather than inconvenience 500 people driving up and down that road. Buy a fence. Or alternatively, move. You bought a house on a main thoroughfare. Don't be stupid.
I hear you, and I'm understanding what you're saying is you don't think we should have speed controls, and I understand that as your opinion. We've determined in the township, though, there's another side to curbs and sidewalks, and that is that the owner of the property needs to maintain them into perpetuity. And so to put sidewalks in our collector streets, though they might have a good purpose as you're outlining, we've determined to keep our efforts in that mostly in the villages where.
Well, you're really talking about widening the road really from Sylvan Road to Centerville Road.
I understand.
The other part of the road where the speed bumps are not, and frankly, where there's a lot more kids and dogs. I mean, if you live there, which I do,
Yeah.
from Sylvan Road to the cemetery where the health campus starts, there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of dogs. There's no speed bumps there,
I know,
you know? And
we know.
the bottom line is up where the road is, where there's basically woods, there's not a lot of kids. What there is though, is people walking their dogs and jogging and walking and skateboarding and riding their bikes and all manner of things going up and down there. Now, that road is barely big enough. You put a truck on one side and a truck on the other, they may hit mirrors. I used to drive a truck, I can tell you that. So the bottom line here is that if you really want to make that road safer, do something about the safety of the road. Don't put the stupid speed bumps there or speed humps or anything else. Because as this lady has said, I have witnessed a number of people that must be so irritated that between the speed humps, they floor it. And they go about 1,000,000 miles an hour. Now, whether you have a permanent speed bump there or a lesser speed bump there, you're not going to stop people from doing that. And the other
Understand.
part of this thing is that when they get to the speed bump, they'll honk their horn. They'll go beep, 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 like that, and honk at each individual bump. I've witnessed that too. They're a pain, frankly, not to use,
Understood,
crude language here, but they're a pain in the ass.
understood.
And, from my point of view, if you want to make the road safer, widen it, stop the people from walking their dogs, their cats, their skateboards, their kids, their, everything else on that road, because it's not wide enough to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank
So
you.
I have a question. Now, we put those well, not maybe for you, but for anyone aware of, we did the same thing on Farmingdale Road with the
I was
temporary
going to talk to you
speed
about that.
bumps.
I'd like to talk to you about that.
So I was wondering, do we get the same kind of bad behavior? It sounds to me like drivers are trying to get these temporary bumps removed by behaving poorly. If it was permanent, I'm wondering if it would change that behavior. But anyway, I would
See, I'm
like
not sure
to,
about Farmingdale. I was going to say, you have on Farmingdale, there's everything but aliens and spacecraft on that road. I mean, you got radar, you got permanent speed bumps, you got fake speed bumps. You even installed a road obstruction on that thing. Now, most
Mhm.
municipalities, as far as I was concerned, my dad was in government for a long time. Most municipalities try to remove obstructions. We installed one.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, what could they be thinking?
traffic
Type
calming.
of thing. So what I'm thinking here is, my first thought was, who had the kind of juice to get all that activity? Because frankly, Spring Valley Road was a wagon trail for about 5 years there. I mean, you could hardly drive on the thing. There were so many potholes. But somebody had enough juice to get everything under the sun except aliens and spacecraft on Farmingdale. So how did that happen?
I'm just wondering, did we see the same kind of behavior with people honking their horns and doing smoky burnouts? Was there any, because it sounds like, to me, it sounds like it's because they're temporary. People are thinking, if I act like a jerk, maybe I can get these taken away. And that sounds like something we're considering, which kind of rewards the bad behavior.
But you can't speed up between those speed bumps.
Oh, yeah, you can.
No, you can't.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? No way. They're far enough apart. You can speed up there. No.
How fast do you think?
I bet you I saw the guy going the other day. He must have been going between 40 and 50.
Hmm.
He had a little Honda Civic or something that was juiced up and he floored it. And I bet he was going 50 miles an hour before he slammed on the brakes, hit his horn, went over the next one, floored it, sped to the next one, slammed on his brakes, hit his horn, flew over that one and went to the next one. Same pattern. And I've seen a couple of people do that. So when you say no, then you need to stand out there and look at those bumps. If you don't think
Well,
people can speed
I
between there,
drive,
ride in the car
I
with me,
drive
I'll
the
speed.
road just about every day.
Well, then I'm
And-
surprised
and-
you haven't seen that either.
And you have to slow down to go over them. And, again, I don't think there's much of a chance there of speeding up, but
But like I
gotta
say,
do
if you
something.
really want to make the road safer, do something about the road itself. Because for a long time, matter of fact, on Corvair Road, when you go to Corvair in Spring Valley, if you're familiar with that, it's coming down that hill. Now, there, right to the left there, there's 2 or 3 huge tulip poplar trees. You have to stick your car halfway out in the road to see around those trees. We don't, that's an obstruction we really ought to get rid of.
well, there's a lot of issues on that road in that area.
So,
There's a big turn,
there,
Dorsia Road coming down.
Yeah.
It would cost millions of dollars to improve that road.
But I think we've addressed the lesser of the problems on that road. The more of the problems are the pedestrian traffic, and the unsafe obstructions that we've put in versus putting up speed bumps.
Okay,
Putting up speed bumps, I don't think have addressed the problem.
thank you.
You've identified the wrong solution.
Well, it has, not to be argumentative, but it has slowed people down. We know that. It's a fact. Our studies and analysis have indicated that. We've
Well-
accomplished what we've wanted.
And, okay, and I wouldn't necessarily say that that's incorrect in some cases, but I would disagree. I think the lady and I would disagree in a lot of other cases. But by the same token too, my thought process here was, why the heck did they put these speed bumps here as opposed to putting them down where there's actually kids and stuff like that? Well, what was the purpose in putting them it was like somebody flipped a coin and said, yeah, let's put them here.
No,
You know,
we
kind of
don't
thing.
flip a coin to do that. We have a traffic engineer who guides us and puts these where they're appropriate.
Because that,
But we'll go back, we will do this. We will go back and talk to him and see what, get some more
main
input.
thoroughfare getting to where I live, I have to pretty much drive that
I
every
know
day
where
too.
Corvair is.
And I'm saying, I don't want to see that turn into Farmingdale,
Okay.
you know, type
No,
thing.
we-
That
we don't want that
freaking
either.
road's a nightmare, but that's not a main thoroughfare. Spring Valley Road is a main thoroughfare.
One other thing is, the reason the bumps are there is because we had a different set of residents that were upset about the speed. So that was an attempt to solve that issue. And now we have a different set of residents that don't like what's going on now. So somehow we have to find,
Well, how
happy
many
medium,
folks
but-
do we have upset about the speed?
I'd say quite a few,
Farmingdale?
Quite a few that came here.
not Farmingdale, but
A number of
Spring
times
Valley.
at a number
Oh,
of
in Spring
meetings
Valley, yeah.
and voiced their concern about this.
If
Were
you
they
go
the
back-
same people showing up at all the meetings, because I'll be glad to do that too and say, you know, get rid of these speed bumps because they are a genuine pain and they're not,
We
they're
hear,
not
we
making
hear
the
your
road safer.
message. I need to move on. Thank you. We hear your message.
Okay.
We also have comments from an N Meringue. Mrs. Schweitzer, is that party here?
I don't believe so, no. But she did have a concern about, she lives at 2348 Spring Valley Road.
Mhm.
And she is concerned about speeding in that area, which is the area that you talk about with the sidewalks and children. But that incident that she is referring to, the accident in front of her house, was not related to speed. But I did share that with you just because it was a comment that was provided to us.
Okay. To conclude about Spring Valley for this meeting, one thought I had in the recent discourse, just as we study speed, we find that there's outliers. There are those that are, as you described, these people who are very disrespectful of your neighborhood and themselves and everything else. The majority of people, though, are responding in a positive way. So we take that into consideration. And we will be continuing to work. We have been working and having discussions with the police on this continuously, not just for Spring Valley, but the other issues in the township. And so, okay, we can do that. Thank you. I'm going to move on now to the section of new business. And we have speed studies that have been completed. And the first item there is the Centerville Road studies, of which we've had 3 of them in 3 different areas of Centerville Road. And I wanted to know, in reviewing the minutes from the last meeting, Mrs. Jacobson, I see you in the audience. Have you been able to get the pictures or a video for us that was discussed in the last minutes?
No. Should I come up?
You may come up, please.
No, I haven't done that yet, but there's a gentleman, and I'm not taking credit for this, that has been put a postcard in people's mailboxes with one of those little square survey things that you go to and complete a little survey.
That was Mr. Myers. They do have his information.
Oh, they do, okay. I
Yes.
don't know. I mean, I put my email, I said, if you wanted to put your email, and I haven't heard from him, so I don't know if
He submitted it, I believe, yesterday
oh, okay. But,
or today.
Is this Mr. Myers, the candidate?
No.
No,
No.
no.
Using US postal mailboxes is not appropriate for mail that is not sent through the post office.
Yeah, and my brother's a retired mailman, so plus I've gotten into trouble when I work putting things in mailboxes. But anyway, what I was planning on doing, and I actually had it done and I just didn't make the copies yet and pass them out. And I wasn't going to go to mailboxes. I was going to ring the doorbells. Is more of a detailed survey, like what time, what is the name of the truck, you know, which direction, east, you know, north, south. And I plan on doing that because there's a lot of residents that want to have a say, but they don't come here today. You know, they don't come to these meetings. So that's all online. But I want to say that, yes, just like the gentleman, we bought our houses on Centerville Road. And then the trucks, I respect truck drivers like you wouldn't believe. I help them on the roadway. I let them go ahead. I do everything. And the survey, I know police chief did a stop of trucks in August. But, all you have to do is stop 2 truck drivers and then the word gets out and they don't use the road until the police are gone. I mean, that happens. That's why I think it's an effort by all of us, the residents and you guys, to get a true picture of what's going on. But the whole thing is, we're not going to get a true picture right now because everything is upside down. The cargo ships all across from Canada, all across up to around the Gulf, all the way up to Canada on the other side. We're in a crisis right now, and the truck drivers, the volume is not going to be there because the goods aren't there to be
okay.
delivered. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, if we put all the efforts right now into doing it, it's going to look totally different in 6 months.
Sure, that's
So,
fine. Okay.
So what you have on your screen is the 3 studies that were done. The first one was done in the 800 block of Centerville, the 900 block, and then the 1100 block. If you look at the speeds on these roadways, I mean, the first section is 25, then the other 2 sections are 35 miles per hour. But the max speeds, or the average speeds, I should say, are 35. I think the last one is 34. This is not a speeding problem on this roadway. This is a collector street. This is not a spot problem with speed. And it also is not a problem with truck traffic at this point in time. But yet we still get complaints about trucks being on this roadway.
And that's what I mean. I mean, the only way that the chief is going to know if there's a problem is when he does the stops. And they have done so much for that road to make it safe. But it's a time when we all have to come together to resolve this issue. And it shouldn't be what you say, what we say. It should be a true picture of what is going on. And if it's going to take residents like myself and anyone else and that man, that Mr. Myers, that passed that postcard, then let's all work together because there's so many variables involved in this whole thing. And
But excuse me, but our information is based on data. Our information is based on actual speed data, as opposed to Mr. Myers, which has a lot of conclusions and observations and perceptions
and where do you get your data from?
from the speed, the speed,
Those things with the signs.
yes, the traffic analyzers.
They're collecting information and data.
Right.
When you see one there,
People slow down.
well, they do.
No,
they do-
well, they
They do tend to, you're right, it's at some point, but they are collecting information there. And the information that we've collected on 3 occasions here indicates that we don't have a speeding issue on Centerville Road.
Okay. And I don't.
And additionally, there's not a significant, when we're talking about less than
1%.
1%, 1.13 hundredths, 13/100ths of a percent. That's a minimal amount of truck traffic. We're never going to completely eliminate that.
And you know what? I agree with that. But, police chief said you know, the study that was done in August was vacation time for everybody. And, you know, and again, you stop one truck or two and they put the word out and they don't come down that. They
Okay.
avoid that. So
Well-
that's why it's us residents who need to work with you guys to resolve this, because I don't want it to go on and on and on. But we're in
I-
a situation now, a very, very serious situation that, you know, we shouldn't be spending a lot of time right now on trucks on roads. We should be spending a lot of time on preparing our homes, ourselves for what might be coming down the pike. And it's not going to be a truck. And
I'm personally willing to work with you
Okay.
on this project. You tell me when the appropriate time is,
okay,
and we'll talk about the possibility of doing another study. But for right now, we're sort of beating a dead horse here.
right, I agree.
Okay?
I agree.
We could possibly come back to it, but for now, the data and the statistics say we really don't have an issue.
And, you know, and I agree with you
Okay.
guys because that's your position.
So let's just, down the road, let's just work on this.
Okay,
The intent is to have one comprehensive study for the
Right.
whole stretch of Centerville Road from Marietta to Harrisburg Pike.
Right.
And we're going to target on doing that in the spring. And maybe by the spring, there'll be more truck traffic. But again, we've not witnessed what is a significant amount of truck traffic.
now here's
So-
my perception. When you say the spring, all right, you're gonna start the corridor construction, okay? That's gonna throw a wrench in the real numbers. And then you're gonna have the traffic going to the hospital. That's all gonna beef up. And
If
the
we
trucks might
wait,
not
we
be
will
on that road
never get
anymore.
it done.
We-
If
we-
we wait, we will never get it done.
We have to deal with the traffic and deal with the numbers
Right,
as they present themselves.
Yeah.
That's all. We can't be concerned about construction in one place or another. It's just, as I said, we'll return to this when you think that it's a good time.
okay,
You and I will
okay.
connect on this, and then we'll go from there. The only piece of information that Mrs. Schweitzer, I could possibly locate, I'd like to know about traffic counts. I would think with the hospital construction, we did traffic counts on all those roads prior to the hospital construction.
Yes.
If I could see some preliminary numbers on Centerville Road, just to see whether traffic, I mean, I'm hearing traffic's increasing on Centerville Road based upon Mr. Meyer's survey. And
Mhm.
you know, I want to commend him on being proactive and doing that survey. But to Mrs. Schweitzer's point, the questions he is analyzing are, we're getting opinions back.
Right.
We're not getting
Right.
facts and we're not getting data.
Right, and that's why my form has that data information.
Well, we'll work
Okay.
on that, but if you just give me those and
Okay.
then we'll take the next step from there, okay?
Yeah.
Mrs. Jacobson.
Yeah.
One thing I'm interested in, I find interesting is Centerville Road, I think gets more traffic, but yet it doesn't seem to have a speeding problem. And Spring Valley Road has a speeding problem. So what is it? What's the difference between these two roads that results in speeding on one and not on the other? It's just kind
It's the
of,
traffic lights, I think. There's a traffic light on Nalt Road.
well, these were done off of Harrisburg Pike. All right, I'm game, sure.
Excuse me, you have to speak into the microphone for the benefit of a recording. Thank you. We can take a microphone back to you if you prefer.
I think the issue there that you actually identified is that a good portion of Centerville Road is 35. So when people are driving 34, bullseye, you're within the speed limit. But for one reason or another, even though the roads are very, very similar, and I'd make a comment that Spring Valley is not as, how should I say this? Not as necessary to have speed control on it as Centerville, being that you have two big, huge red brick buildings that are called schools. They're full of kids, they're full of buses, they're full of people picking up and dropping off, sports. You have everything from rugby to baseball going on there. And yet the speed limit's 35. So when people go 34, it's not speeding. But when people on Spring Valley Road, which particularly where they have the speed bumps is kind of the middle of nowhere, it's just basically a bunch of woods.
Sir,
All of
the
a sudden the
speed-
speed's 25.
sir, the speed.
That's a head scratcher to me.
The speed of the schools is 25. And that, along with the steepness of the hill down to Harrisburg Pike, are two factors that make it significantly different than Spring Valley. That's why I believe that traffic is less speedy, less stretches that are long and things like that. That's kind of irrelevant to the question, though. Our goal is to have safety on all the roads. And so
Right.
we have to look at them individually as they are. And as I said, I'd like to
Well, I would, see,
concludes
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
Centerville.
interrupt or be pedantic here, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that change the speed on Spring Valley to 35, your problem is solved. Problem over. You're not gonna have people driving 50 miles an hour on that road, except in between the
We
speed
could
bumps,
change
because
the
now they're
speed.
really annoyed.
We could change the speed to 50 miles an hour on Spring Valley and we would have people driving 70 or 80, sir.
That could be.
We have the outliers. That's what we're talking about. Those that have no regard at all for what the sign says for speed.
Well, then
That's
they're
the
not gonna pay
issue.
attention to the speed bumps or anything else either, as per the guy who drives 50 between the two speed bumps and slams on his
But
brakes. and
he's
honks
the
horn.
exception to the rule. He's just, as you described him, I won't, and that's fine. We understand the problem there, but let's not go back to Spring Valley. We're on Centerville. And thank you. I want
right.
to
My fault.
ask
I
if
know.
if anyone else in the audience has any remarks or comments about Spring Valley.
Centerville.
Centerville.
Centerville, thank you, thank you. If not, I would like to move to Millmar, the Millmar Road study. And who can we have address that, please?
Diane's going to pull up the results. I believe it doesn't indicate any problem. Now, that was initiated originally by a gentleman that felt that they were speeding down the hill in
Yes.
that neighborhood.
That is correct. And I recall now the communication that we had on that.
So in the method of doing every roadway, we decided to do Millmar to see exactly what that was. And it didn't appear to be a problem.
We have a 25-mile speed limit on that section of roadway because even if it's not posted, it's a residential area. There's 1,920 cars were observed in this study. The average daily volume was 240. The average speed was 26 miles per hour. And we had the 85th percentile was 33. So again, we have that smaller element of people who speed and they drive the road the way they think they should be able to because of the condition of the road, et cetera. But that's the report from Millmar. For those that haven't been attending here and maybe are not aware, although the speed may be posted at 25, there's a 10 mile per hour variable, I might call it, or allowance that tickets cannot be issued until they're 36 miles per hour or more. And so we consider the Millmar situation to be acceptable. We'd like to not have anybody driving 33 miles an hour on that, but nonetheless, we should be grateful that that's the extent of what we have. Yes, Mrs.
That's my neighborhood.
Is-
And I gotta tell you that I'm glad to see that massive improvement. Because when Mr. Madonna did that for my daughter and her friend, when they were concerned about how fast the cars were, and that road was the reason why we were able to get watch children signs in that whole Millmar development. And, I think that's great improvement. That means the kids that lived in that area all grew up and moved out. I mean, because it's mostly, I think, residents that would really do that speeding since it's a kind of out of the way
Right.
resident. So I'm glad to see the improvement on the traffic study on that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anything else from anyone on Millmore? If not, the next one we have is the Nalt Road Study. I'm going to try to bring that up to refresh my.
I don't remember seeing that one.
I can't get there we go.
Working on it. Sure.
You won't find anything. This was one of the studies that we did to be proactive. So we know that in the past 20 years, we periodically get complaints of speeding. So when we were putting the equipment out, we put it out on this road, just to have a baseline so that when people come in and complain, we can just go back to this study. That's all this is. And it would indicate to me that it's not a speed problem, at least for the week that we did it in August.
What was the location?
Essentially by the sod farm that the township owns on Nalt Road.
Okay,
That stretch of road. And we do periodic enforcement in there. And it's hit or miss. You have your outliers. Sometimes we can sit there for several hours and get no violations. Sometimes you can get a couple. And then while I'm up here, the only thing I just wanted to make a clarification so that the board understood this. When we're talking about the speed study equipment, there are two things. One are the educational signs that flash, like your speed is or whatever. Those aren't the studies that we're basing it on. What we're using are, I think they're called Jamar Black Cats or something. They're little boxes that drivers don't really see. So if you see the signs out that are flashing, everybody says, well, of course, nobody's going to speed because it's flashing. That's not the intent of them. In traffic enforcement, there's enforcement, education, and engineering. So that's for the education aspect of it, to warn people, slow down. And we have several sets of those signs that we move throughout the township. We get a complaint, we move them, and we put them over here, then we move them over there, and we try to move them around every week or so. The other ones, Perry's people put out, and they used to be strips on the street, or a little box that got nailed into the macadam. Now they're put on a post. So most people wouldn't even notice them. I just want to make that clarification.
thank you. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward and state your name if you would.
Allison Brody, and I've lived at the intersection of Nalt Road down by Snapper Dam Road. So that's a more residential, it's all residential, I guess, up to where you were talking about. It's very residential on the side where I live. If you cross over a very small one-lane bridge, it is residential for a while, then it becomes light industrial. So what I've observed, and I don't know the history of this intersection, I've only lived here a little over a year, is that we have a tremendous number of pedestrians, cyclists, children on the south side of the little bridge. It's a school bus stop on both sides, and there's just a lot of people there who use it for exercise. I think a lot of runners go out Nalt Road. And then we just have people coming down from church at a really high speed and also coming over the bridge from the light industrial area. Now, that's my perception. So I don't know if any traffic study has been done of what the actual speed is.
Not
that
on
little
Church
bridge.
Street. Yeah. You have done Church?
But not
You're
Nalt.
talking Nalt, you're talking
Between
the
church
other
and-
side of Nalt,
Yeah.
out towards the warehouse
That's
area.
true.
Yeah.
done that section. We can add that.
Yeah, let's put it,
I'll put that on.
And you want to do it before the bridge, between the bridge and
Yes,
church.
Outside of the bridge, in the residential side, as opposed to on the light industrial side.
Right.
Marked with 25-mile-per-hour signs in all directions. So it's not that it's not marked. I didn't know if it would be helpful to have those educational signs put up. The other thing that we did notice recently, and this is more of a maintenance issue, is we see quite a few very heavy trucks coming over the little bridge. We just happen to live there and observe this. So.
One of the other tasks before us, and it's actually a work in process, is to determine what routes should be the truck routes through East Hempfield Township and to manage and control them appropriately. And yes, they would not cross that bridge. They should not be. The difficulty we have is the GPS up in the sky doesn't know our situation. And so they go shortest distance and things like that. So
And I know the police have been watching that in the past at least, and have actually caught a few going across there.
Thank you. for-
if we can get a heavy enough truck, he destroys the culvert, we'll get a new one. Okay, well, we have covered the agenda that's printed except for public comment. Is there any other public comment? Ma'am, I see you in the back and haven't had anything to say. Don't you have something to say to us?
With what's going on with the traffic. I was here last month and asked you about the Stony Battery, and I hope that it's on your agenda. And we just wanted to kind of have an idea of a timeline of when we can expect to see something done to slow these people down.
Chief Skiles will address that.
Could I have your name, please?
Could we have your name, please, and address?
Dawn Flaherty.
Dawn Blakely? Flagery. Sorry,
Flaherty.
Flaherty. Thank you.
Not sure which one of these is on. Is this one?
Both.
Both on.
All right. In terms of Stony Battery Road, we have done speed enforcement in conjunction with West Hempfield Township Police because the east side of that street is East Hempfield, the west side is West Hempfield. We identified that signage on the West Hempfield side was improper. It wasn't posted, so their streets department reposted it. We did a speed detail last week. There are others that are coming up, and I think that the equipment is either was out there last week or should be going out to do the actual speed study. So we're trying to get an idea as to at least what the base speeds are there now. But we're hitting it in terms of enforcement and trying to be proactive.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think they were south. I don't know, I wasn't on it. They were, you might not see them.
Well, the good news is things are moving along and we are analyzing the situation. So that's the real positive takeaway from this. Sure.
Do you have where the warehouses are being built?
Improvements in terms of road widening. That's going to be happening. Perry, we're scheduling that for 23, 22.
That far out?
Probably some of the widening may occur in 22 and then total repaving, hopefully in 23. We need to wait until all the utilities are installed at those locations so that they're not ripping up the brand new paving and that sort of thing. So hopefully they will be built out and we'll be able to hit that in 23.
Where's your home, ma'am? Oh, you're on Stony Battery? Yes.
Yeah,
Which part of it, please?
right where they're working on the new building.
Okay. Up near Kaufman,
No.
No,
closer to
no,
Nalt.
yeah.
closer to Nalt. Okay.
Pretty much in front of 701, yes, which is the middle parcel.
Yeah, well, they're working on the one from
No, right. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
that driveway that they're using for the big trucks is right across from my house, and I'm constantly picking up their big boulders that they chuck up when their trucks go spinning out and throwing them back across the road for their driveway. But yes, I know it's temporary inconvenience, but it's a mess.
Well, just a quick comment, and we're glad that you came and brought this to our attention. Is your home in East Hempfield or West Hempfield?
Unfortunately, I'm in West.
Okay.
I have also been to West, and I will be there
Okay,
again next
that
week.
was just my
Yeah.
suggestion.
Trust
I'm-
me, I've been both places. I'm
pressure
gonna
on
be a
both of
pain in
us.
your butt until this is settled.
Okay, Thank you.
It just, we just need something done.
Okay, I hear you.
And both sides are saying our hand, whatever.
Uh,
I'm glad to know that you put something out.
Okay,
I will warn you also that they're going to have an early morning concrete pour tomorrow morning.
They start at 6:30.
This one's going to be at 4. Yeah. It's necessary because of the volume of concrete that they need to pour, unfortunately. And then it's going to be the same thing for 791, which is also in your neighborhood. It's going to be starting next week. But as you said, temporary.
It's temporary convenience,
Mhm.
we've got that mindset, but traffic is an issue.
But the traffic is not,
It's always been there, and it's just-
right, right, right. The warehouses will make a difference too, once they're up and running, yeah. Yeah.
Fixing that.
About a year.
yeah, it doesn't have,
In the spring, you're gonna see widening, the temporary widening. But then the permanent will wait until the 791, which is the one on the corner, really hasn't really started yet. In terms of utility installations. They have to kind of wait. 701, I probably has their utilities already crossed. But it's just a process that has to occur, and we can only pave in the spring. We try to avoid the school because of that, so we're talking about summers. So that's why you're gonna see the widening done next year, and then the actual paving in 23.
Okay. I would say that one last call for public comment. Nothing from Zoom, Mrs.
No, sir.
Barber? All right. In that case, I would look for a motion for adjournment.
so moved.
We have a motion to adjourn from Mr. Bennett. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Weaver. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you all for coming and providing us with the information.
Good job.